I want you to take a moment right now, like wherever you happen to be, and just look around your current environment.
Yeah, even if you're listening to this while sitting in some cramped apartment in the middle of a massive city.
Right, exactly. Surrounded by concrete and steel and that endless hum of traffic right outside your window. Or maybe you're sitting in a perfectly sterile, temperature-controlled corporate office building.
Just completely bathed in the glare of those awful fluorescent lights.
We have this deep-seated, almost instinctual tendency in modern society to think that true magic, that profound grounding connection to the earth, only exists in some remote, untouched fairy tale
Like
forest.
you have to book a flight to a pristine mountain range just to feel connected to the world.
Exactly. But what if the magic you associate with those ancient whispering woods is actually pulsing right under your feet right now, just waiting for you to tap into it? What if the concrete jungle is really just another kind of forest?
It's a completely paradigm-altering shift in perspective, isn't it?
It really is.
The idea that you don't need to fundamentally escape your reality to find what is sacred. You don't need to quit your job and move to a cabin off the grid.
Thank goodness, because I am not built for off-grid living.
Right. I mean, you just need to learn how to truly, deeply see the reality you are already inhabiting. It's about recognizing that the natural world isn't something out there.
Yeah.
It is right here, and you are inextricably woven into it.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the Book Nook. We are jumping into another deep dive, our ongoing exploration into the most impactful, transformative books in self-help, spirituality, psychology, and personal growth.
And today's deep dive is a really special one.
It is. Today, we are exploring a book that completely shatters the illusions, the Hollywood stereotypes, and all that historical baggage of what it actually means to be intimately connected to the earth. We are diving deep into The Green Witch, your complete guide to the natural magic of herbs, flowers, essential oils, and more by Arin Murphy-Hiscock.
And we have a very specific mission for this deep dive. Our goal today is to thoroughly demystify the entire concept of witchcraft.
Yes, please. We need to clear the air on this.
We are going to entirely divorce it from these spooky pop culture stereotypes. So no pointy hats, no bubbling cauldrons, no dark curses.
Right.
Instead, we are going to explore how anyone, and I mean literally anyone, can use the core principles of what is known as the green path to find balance, healing, and a profound sense of connection in their modern everyday life.
I love that. We're going to examine how this highly personalized, wonderfully flexible practice can actually act as a direct cure for that intense modern alienation of burnout so many of us feel on a daily basis.
Exactly.
But to even start down this path, we kind of have to clear the brush, so to speak. We really need to redefine what a witch actually is in this specific context because we have to escape the fairy tale.
Right. Arin Murphy-Hiscock points out that historically, a green witch lived apart.
Like physically isolated.
Yeah, they were out on the fringes of the village, living near the woods, using the energies of plants and trees to heal the local population. So if you needed a remedy back in the day, you had to travel out to the edge of the wilderness to see them.
But today, that's just not the case. A modern green witch is just as likely to be living on the 14th floor of a high-rise in Chicago or out in a sprawling, manicured suburb.
Oh, absolutely. They could be working in a cutthroat corporate business environment, teaching middle school math, practicing modern medicine, or just being a full-time parent.
What is truly fascinating about this approach is how it explicitly detaches the identity of the Green Witch from all those external superficial markers.
It's so freeing, honestly.
A Green Witch is absolutely not defined by their zip code or their proximity to a national park. They aren't defined by how they earn their paycheck, and they certainly aren't limited to just working with literal plants and herbs in a backyard garden.
But perhaps most importantly, and this is where a lot of people get tripped up, they are not defined by a specific religion.
Yes, let's unpack this. Because the distinction between witchcraft and religion is a massive stumbling block for a lot of people.
Huge stumbling block.
When I hear the word witchcraft, my brain immediately jumps to a structured, dogmatic system. But this philosophy makes a really crucial distinction. Witchcraft, in the context of the green path, is simply the practice of working with natural energies to attain goals.
Right. It is constantly, almost universally confused with Wicca.
Yes, and that confusion is incredibly common. But they are vastly different things. Wicca is a specific, formal, modern, nature-based religion.
It has a recognizable structure, it has tenets, it has specific holidays, and it often involves the worship of recognized god and goddess figures.
But green witchcraft, on the other hand, is a secular practice, or at least it can be.
Totally. It does not require worshiping any specific deities. It doesn't ask you to follow rigid religious structures or bow to a high priestess.
Which means you can be a green witch and actively participate in any major world religion, right? You
Right.
could be Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, or you could have absolutely no religion at all.
Exactly. The only prerequisite is that you honor nature as sacred and recognize your place within it. It's not something you do on the weekends, it's a path you live.
I was really chewing on this concept, and the best way I can describe modern green witchcraft to someone who has never heard of it is, well, it's like finding a Wi-Fi signal.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The energy of nature is everywhere, constantly broadcasting a signal. It's in the soil buried beneath the city pavement. It's in the shifting weather patterns that bring rain to your neighborhood. It's in the potted houseplants struggling on your windowsill.
The signal is always there.
Exactly. You don't need to move to a rustic cabin in the woods to connect to the internet, right? You just need to learn how to tune your internal receiver to the frequencies of the natural world that are present in your immediate environment. You just need the right password.
And in the case of the green wish, the password is your own conscious intent. That is a brilliant analogy, and it scales perfectly. Because you are the one actively tuning the receiver, the practice naturally looks different for every single person. Well, let's stick with your Wi-Fi analogy. If you live in the lush, damp forests of Massachusetts, you are connecting to a very specific local network. But if you pack up and move to the arid deserts of New Mexico, your practice absolutely has to change.
Right, because the frequency of the land changes.
Exactly. The native flora, the wildlife, the climate, the very rhythm of the earth, it all shifts dramatically. You must adapt your internal receiver to the new local energies of that specific landscape. It is a completely free-form, fiercely adaptable practice.
Wait, so if it's not a formal religion like Wicca and it doesn't have an unbroken line of initiated elders telling you exactly how to practice, where exactly did it come from?
It definitely has roots.
Did this just spring up out of nowhere in the 21st century? Because the book outlines a very distinct family tree, tracing the historical roots back to village herbalists, midwives, wise women, and folks historically known as the cunning folk.
Right. It definitely didn't spring from nowhere. The modern green witch finds their spiritual and practical foremothers and forefathers in these vital community figures of the past.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Think about rural communities centuries ago. These were the people who held the localized knowledge of life and death. They were the midwives bringing new life into the world in the middle of a harsh winter, and they were the ones preparing the bodies of the dead for burial.
Wow, so they were really dealing with the extremes of the human experience.
Absolutely. They possessed an encyclopedic generational knowledge of local plants, knowing exactly which root would cure a fever and which berry would stop a heart. They healed both the mind and the body.
Which raises such a fascinating, almost tragic dynamic. I kept asking myself while diving into the source material, why was society historically so incredibly uncomfortable with these figures?
That's a great question.
Were they basically just the original IT support for nature? Like they understood the underlying operating system of the world, they knew how the plants communicated, they understood the weather cycles, they knew the mechanics of the human body, and the rest of the community just didn't understand the code, so they feared the programmer.
That's a very sharp way to look at it. Humanity has always had a deeply complicated, often hostile relationship with specialized knowledge that isn't easily understood by the common person.
People fear what they don't get.
Exactly. When someone can do something you can't comprehend, it looks like magic, and magic is terrifying if you don't control it. But there's also a very practical, logistical reason why these historical green witches often lived on the physical fringes of society.
It wasn't just because they were shunned, right?
No, the philosophy suggests they actively chose to live apart from the chaotic center of the village, because it's simply harder to hear what nature is communicating when you're constantly surrounded by the overwhelming noise and drama of people.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Living out near the tree line, near the fields, made it physically and mentally easier to commune with the living world of green, to observe the subtle shifts in the environment, and to gather the uncultivated supplies they needed.
Okay, yeah. If you're trying to tune into that natural Wi-Fi signal, you don't want the interference of 100 other devices crowding the bandwidth.
Perfectly said.
And speaking of specific roles, we have to talk about the cunning folk. which is a term that feels straight out of a fantasy novel, but it's very real history.
Very real.
The historian Owen Davies wrote extensively about popular magic and English history, and the cunning folk were a little different from your standard herbal healers.
Right, they had a very specific niche.
Historically, they dealt heavily with lifting bewitchments or breaking curses for people who genuinely believed they were victims of malevolent spells. They were practitioners of deeply localized folk magic things like divination to figure out who you were going to marry, predicting catastrophic weather to save the crops, or ensuring a herd of cattle wouldn't get sick.
Practical, everyday survival stuff.
Exactly. But here's the fascinating part. When the general societal belief in witchcraft and literal curses faded during the Enlightenment, the specific societal role of the cunning folk faded right along with it. Their job basically became obsolete.
Precisely. And while the cunning folk faded, other branches of this family tree survived and adapted. Modern green witchcraft shares a lot of DNA with a couple of other recognized paths, namely kitchen witches and hedge witches.
Okay, break those down for us.
It helps to understand the subtle differences. Kitchen witches are incredibly family-oriented and domestic. Their magic is rooted entirely in the home and in household chores.
Wait, chores, like doing the dishes.
Literally, yes. For a kitchen witch, sweeping the kitchen floor isn't just a chore to remove physical dirt. It is a conscious, energetic act of clearing stagnant or negative energy from the family's living space. Baking a loaf of bread is a magical act of providing nourishment and love.
I love that. It totally reframes mundane tasks. And hedge witches.
Hedge witches, on the other hand, are usually solitary practitioners who live closer to raw nature, often quite literally on the hedges or edges of town. Their practice focuses much more heavily on intense spellcraft, journeying, and neo-pagan spiritual paths.
But what I find so deeply empowering about the Green Path is how it views this history. Modern practitioners often try so hard to link themselves to these historical figures. They want to claim they are the direct descendants of the cunning folk or the ancient midwives, just to feel a sense of legitimacy or tradition.
Which is a very human impulse to seek that validation.
Right, but ultimately, the truest, most authentic tradition in green witchcraft is the sense of self. You aren't beholden to how a 16th century wise woman did things. You are creating your own living practice based entirely on your own inner light and your current reality.
Exactly. You acknowledge and honor the deep influences of the past, but you do not bind yourself to them. You don't get trapped in historical reenactment. You adapt the core principles to what needs to be done right now in your own modern life.
So if these historical cunning folk were alienated by society and the modern practice is completely decentralized, it makes sense that the modern green witch has to build a completely self-reliant ethical system to survive.
They absolutely do.
If you don't have a village supporting you and you don't have a high priestess handing down commandments, how do you govern yourself? What are the actual pillars holding this solo practice up?
That is the pivotal question for anyone walking a solitary path. The Green Witch's entire outlook hinges on three core concepts: healing, harmony, and balance. Everything they do filters through those three concepts.
Healing, harmony, and balance. Got it.
And these concepts are applied across three distinct pillars of focus. The first pillar is the earth.
Meaning the planet as a whole.
Yes, but not just an abstract love for the globe. It means fiercely caring for your local environment, the literal ground you walk on, the watershed you live in, as well as the planet as a macroscopic organism.
Okay, that's the first pillar.
The second pillar is humanity. This encompasses humanity at large, but practically it means tending to your local community, your friends, your family, your neighbors, and your circles of acquaintances.
And the third pillar is yourself, which sounds simple, but I imagine it's actually the most difficult part of the practice.
Oh, it is undeniably the most challenging. Focusing on yourself in the context of the Green Path doesn't just mean taking a bubble bath and calling it self-care.
As nice as that sounds.
Right. But it really means doing the grueling psychological work to function in true harmony with the stark realities of your own life. It means accepting your authentic self in totality. And that includes doing what psychologists call shadow work, accepting your dark, messy, or destructive sides, not just the positive, Instagram-friendly aspects of your personality.
Right, because human beings are incredibly skilled at self-deception. We lie to ourselves so efficiently that we can become completely deaf to massive parts of our own personalities. We ignore our jealousy, our anger, our capacity for cruelty.
Exactly. A green witch recognizes that nature contains both the gentle spring rain
Sure.
and the devastating hurricane. Both are natural.
Oh, yeah.
Therefore, the practitioner works tirelessly to maintain a conscious harmony between their own darker, destructive aspects and their positive, nurturing ones. You cannot bring your personal energy into true balance if you are actively denying half of your own nature.
Wait, hold on. This leads me to a really massive point of friction.
Let's hear it.
No rule book. If this is a purely solo practice with no commandments, no holy text, and an acceptance of your own dark side, doesn't that just invite total moral chaos?
I can see why you think that.
Right, because if there is no overarching ethical rulebook in green witchcraft, how does a practitioner not just justify selfish, destructive behavior as natural? Nature is brutal, after all. Animals eat each other. What stops a green witch from acting with complete selfishness and just saying, hey, it's the law of the jungle?
That is exactly the pushback people have when they encounter a non-dogmatic system, and it is a completely valid concern. But this is where the profound psychological shift of the green path comes in. The ethics of the green witch are not governed by fear of divine punishment.
So what are they governed by?
They are governed by radical, inescapable empathy and a hyper-awareness of interconnectedness. It operates on the ultimate form of the golden rule, or ethical reciprocity.
How does that actually play out in real life, though?
It plays out because the green witch does not view themselves as separate from the environment or from other people. When you fundamentally understand, not just intellectually but physically and spiritually, that you are a true manifestation of the earth, harming the earth or harming another person is literally objectively harming yourself.
Oh, I see.
It makes absolutely no sense to intentionally poison the well you drink from or to strike your own hand with a hammer.
Okay, that makes so much sense. It's shifting from being a steward of nature to actually being nature. We often use language like, we need to protect the earth, we are its custodians, but that implies we are somehow standing outside of it looking in.
Which is a very modern, disconnected way of thinking.
Right. The Green Witch philosophy says, no, you are a piece of the earth, temporarily walking around in a human suit. Therefore, you naturally treat plants, animals, and humans with the exact same immense respect you have for the earth because they are all made of the exact same stardust and soil.
Precisely. It demands immense personal responsibility. With this finely tuned awareness comes a profound, heavy knowledge of exactly who and what will be affected by your every action and choice.
It's like you can't unsee the connections once you realize they're there.
Exactly. When you possess that level of radical empathy and that innate sense of guardianship for all life, a written list of ethical strictures is entirely obsolete. You simply don't need a commandment etched in stone telling you not to pollute the local river if you literally feel the health of that river as an extension of your own veins.
So what does this all mean? This actually reminds me of the difference between classical sheet music and jazz music.
Oh, I love a good music analogy.
Let me test this out on you. If we imagine classical music as formal, highly structured religions, you have strict notes printed on a page. You have centuries of tradition telling you exactly how to play those notes. If you miss a note, you've made a mistake. You've objectively broken a rule and ruined the symphony. But green witchcraft is jazz. There is no sheet music. There is no conductor waving a baton. It relies entirely on feeling the underlying rhythm of the universe, listening incredibly intently to the other players in the room, which in this case is the natural environment and human society, and improvising harmoniously in the present moment. You have to be incredibly present, empathetic, and skilled to play jazz well without it turning into a chaotic mess. Just like you have to be incredibly empathetic and aware to walk the green path without a rule book.
I love that we are keeping these metaphors alive because that jazz analogy perfectly captures the fluidity and the deep listening required for the practice. And this concept of fluidity extends directly into how the Green Witch views the concept of magic itself.
Which is the most loaded word in the dictionary.
It really is.
Okay.
This is where the most significant demystification in the entire philosophy happens. Because let's be honest, the word magic carries an immense amount of cultural baggage.
Oh, absolutely. When I hear magic, I think of stage illusions, sleight of hand, or manipulating unnatural, supernatural forces to bend reality to your selfish will, like shooting fireballs or something.
Exactly. We think of breaking the laws of physics. But the green path defines magic as something perfectly, beautifully natural. It is simply the conscious use of natural energy combined with your own intent to understand and harmonize with the world around you.
So if there is no rule book and you just act with empathy to harmonize with nature, what actually makes this magic? Where does the mundane end and the magical begin?
That's the secret. They don't end or begin. The Green Witch views the everyday, the utterly ordinary, as deeply sacred. The philosophy points out something fascinating about language here. The word mundane, which we usually use to mean boring or tedious, literally comes from the Latin word mundus, which simply means of the material world.
Wow, I had no idea.
So the mundane isn't something to escape. It is the very source of the Green Witch's power.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The idea that stirring a pot of soup on a Tuesday night, sweeping the dust off your front porch, or even just taking a deep, intentional breath of cold morning air, these are all potent acts of magic if they are done with conscious, focused intent. You aren't waiting for a full moon to do magic. You are doing it while folding laundry.
Yes, but there is a very real psychological trap here, and it's a danger we need to discuss. Because if absolutely everything is magical and every breath is full of potential, a practitioner faces a huge risk of becoming completely desensitized.
Right. If every single mundane moment is inherently magical, you might just end up taking it all for granted. You fall into a psychological rut where no moment feels special anymore because everything is theoretically special. It's the if everyone is super, no one is problem.
Exactly. To combat this, the Green Witch has to engage in active, relentless mindfulness. You have to consciously command yourself to pause and marvel at a sunset, to feel the raw power of a thunderstorm, to truly observe the subtle, shifting light as the seasons change, just to keep that energetic connection alive and vital. You cannot run on autopilot.
Let's break down how this fundamentally changes your view of cause and effect with a really practical example.
Okay, let's do it.
Say you have a terrible tension headache and you decide to brew a hot cup of rosemary tea to treat it. Is brewing that tea a magical spell, or is that just basic natural medicine?
What is so liberating about this philosophy is that to the Green Witch, the distinction does not matter in the slightest.
Yeah.
It is a false binary.
It's both.
Yes, the scientifically verifiable chemical properties of the rosemary are physically interacting with your biology to heal your body. But at the exact same time, the conscious connection, the gratitude, and the deliberate intent you bring to the act of brewing that tea are working with the plant's unique energetic signature to soothe your spirit.
So it's the conscious connection that makes it both mundane and magical simultaneously. You aren't just consuming a chemical compound, you are collaborating with the rosemary.
Exactly. And if we contrast this slow, collaborative green magic with other occult practices, the difference in mechanics is stark. In many forms of high ritual magic, the practitioner is doing something very active and forceful. They are deliberately raising a massive amount of energy, shaping it with their willpower, aiming it at a specific external target, and releasing it to force a change in the universe. It is a manipulation of external forces.
But the Green Witch works entirely from the inside out. They aren't forcing anything. They seek to become a seamless part of the natural ebb and flow of the energy that is already present in the room, in the forest, in the city street. They move subtly, like water flowing around a rock, rather than trying to smash the rock. It's a much slower, deeply integrated, almost passive approach to shifting reality.
Which means, wonderfully, that you don't need a massive, expensive hidden laboratory or an elaborate altar full of rare imported artifacts to do this work. Because the magic is internally driven and collaborative, the toolkit of the Green Witch is remarkably accessibly simple. There are no obligatory expensive tools. You do not have to go drop hundreds of dollars on a custom crystal wand or a velvet robe to be a valid practitioner.
Which brings us right back to our Wi-Fi analogy. If the natural energy of the Earth is the Wi-Fi signal and your intent is the password, are these physical tools basically just the antennas? Are they just physical objects designed to help you catch a weak signal when your mind is distracted by a noisy, chaotic city?
That is a perfect continuation of the metaphor. The tools do not have intrinsic magic of their own. They are antennas that amplify and focus your own inherent capability. And the very first tool, the most vital antenna you will ever possess, is something you already have, your own hands. The philosophy stresses that the human hand is the most valuable tool in the entire practice.
Let's talk about the mechanics of touch. Because we are so incredibly visually dominant in modern society, we experience the world through screens and text.
We do, but the Green Witch actively re-engages the power of tactile feedback. The sense of touch is how a practitioner gathers critical information about the world. You touch the soil to know if it needs water. You feel the texture of a leaf to identify it. You physically dispense care to a sick child or an ailing animal. Your hands literally become the physical moving extension of your energetic will and your internal thoughts.
Then there is the journal. And I was so relieved by the clarification here. When I think of witches' journals, I think of a pristine, leather-bound book of shadows where every spell is meticulously written in perfect calligraphy, and if you spill coffee on it, the whole thing is ruined.
Oh no, the Green Witch's Journal is the exact opposite of that. It is a working field notebook. It is supposed to be chaotic and messy.
That is such a relief.
It is stuffed full of evolving, contradictory observations, crude sketches of local plants, hand-drawn maps of where the best dandelions grow, recipes that failed, and mundane notes on exactly what the weather was doing on a specific Tuesday in October. It is a raw, real-life snapshot of your growing relationship with your environment, highly unedited. You are meant to shove it in your pocket, take it on a muddy walk, and jot down whatever you experience in the moment.
Alongside the journal, the philosophy mentions a few other simple tools, like a basic cup, ideally ceramic, for holding water, which grounds the practice in the foundational elements. But the two tools that completely captivated my imagination were the staff and the knife. Because these aren't just pieces of wood and metal, they are potent, opposite, and entirely complementary psychological and physical archetypes.
They are the ultimate symbols of balance. The staff is made of wood. It is solid. It supports your weight. It physically connects your hand directly to the ground you walk on. It represents unity, growth, and the upward thrust of life. The knife, on the other hand, or any sharp blade or sickle, is used for exactly one purpose: to sever. It is used to cut, to harvest, to forcefully separate one thing from another.
Okay, I have to push you on the mechanics here. How exactly does holding a wooden stick or blade actually help a practitioner manage energy? What is the physical and psychological mechanism at play?
Let's look at the staff first. Imagine you are experiencing a severe panic attack, or you are entirely overwhelmed by the chaotic energy of a crowded city street. Your internal energy is spiraling upward, frantic and untethered.
I think we've all been there.
Right. By taking a heavy wooden staff, or even just a solid walking stick, and pressing it firmly into the earth, you are engaging your tactile senses. You are forcing your brain to acknowledge a solid, unmoving object that connects your physical body to the massive, stable mass of the planet.
Oh, I see.
The staff acts as a grounding rod for lightning. You consciously push that frantic, nervous energy down through your hands into the wood and let the earth absorb it. It is a physical action that triggers a psychological release.
That makes total sense. And the knife?
The knife is about boundaries. Sometimes growth requires violent separation. If you have a toxic relationship that is draining your energy, or a deeply ingrained bad habit, you cannot just passively hope it goes away. A practitioner might use the physical act of cutting, perhaps slicing a piece of twine that represents that toxic bond to signal to their own subconscious that the connection is permanently definitively severed. The sharp physical feedback of the blade cutting the cord creates a visceral psychological reality. The energy is cut.
I found myself just marveling at the profound, elegant simplicity of holding those two concepts at once. The staff and the knife allow you to physically hold the entire duality of nature in your two hands. You literally cannot have a thriving, sustainable garden without both. You need the deep roots and the unbridled growth, but you also absolutely need the eventual lethal harvest and the ruthless pruning of dead branches so the rot doesn't spread.
Yeah.
You are honoring both life and death, connection and separation, just by utilizing those two tools.
And then, bringing us firmly back to the mundane reality, the philosophies suggest having simple cotton or medical gauze on hand.
Which is just so perfectly grounding. It reminds you that you aren't just playing pretend. You are doing real physical work. You are dealing with real thorny plants. You are getting cut, and you are making real tangible remedies for physical bodies.
What is so vital to understand here is how this intentional lack of fancy bells and whistles. There are no elaborate theatrical robes, no complex geometrical circles drawn on the floor with expensive chalk. It forces the practitioner to rely entirely, 100%, on their own inner power and their direct physical senses. You cannot hide behind the theatricality of a ritual. You have to actually tangibly feel the energy of the plant. You have to actually observe the incoming storm.
And observing the incoming storm brings us to perhaps the most critical, uncompromising aspect of this entire philosophy, attuning to your specific, exact corner of the universe. The green path is fiercely, unapologetically rooted in the now and the local. You have to know the actual environment you are standing in, not some romanticized, idyllic version of nature you read about in a Victorian novel or watched on a pristine nature documentary.
It demands absolute presence. And the author makes a brilliant, disruptive point about how we view the calendar. In North America, our standardized wall calendars dictate that spring begins officially around March 21st, the equinox. But the Green Witch observes the local, physical seasons, not the arbitrary printed dates.
Wait, really? So you just ignore the calendar?
Yeah, as you step outside your door in your specific town and the trees aren't budding, the frost is still hard on the ground, and the animals aren't acting like it's spring until April 15th, then you celebrate the arrival of spring on April 15th.
That is so liberating.
It is. You trust your own direct observations of the natural world over standardized, mass-produced dates. Adhering to a date on a piece of paper simply because it is a societal standard makes absolutely no energetic sense when you're trying to attune to the actual living energy of your specific locale.
And to help with this, the philosophy breaks the year down into these beautiful, flowing seasonal tides, which perfectly echo the stages of our own human lives. There is the spring to summer tide, which is the undeniable tide of rapid growth and expansion. Summer to autumn is the reaping tide, the harvest, the culmination of effort. Autumn to winter is the resting tide, the pulling back, the hibernation. And winter to spring is the cleansing tide, the preparation for new life.
You observe these macroscopic tides in nature, and you use them as a mirror to reflect on the microcycles of your own life. You apply them to your relationships, the arc of your career, and your personal psychological growth.
But, okay, let me play devil's advocate here, because I know we have listeners right now who are rolling their eyes at the resting tide. How in the world does a listener who is stuck in a grinding, unforgiving 9-to-5 corporate job actually honor the resting tide of winter when their CEO is demanding explosive fourth quarter growth? Modern capitalism doesn't care about the resting tide. You can't just tell your boss, sorry, the earth is hibernating, I can't meet my quotas. How does this esoteric philosophy survive contact with modern corporate reality?
That is the ultimate test of the modern Green Witch, isn't it? Bridging the ancient rhythm with the modern demand. If you cannot literally hibernate for the winter because of societal obligations, you have to learn to microdose the resting tide.
Microdose the resting tide. I love that.
You find the winter within the day. Maybe it means fiercely protecting your lunch hour from December to February. No screens, no meetings, just quiet stillness. Maybe it means accepting that your personal energy is naturally lower, so you decline optional social events without guilt. You honor the resting tide in the margins of your life, conserving your energy wherever possible, so that you don't completely shatter when your job demands everything you have. You find the balance where you can, rather than abandoning the concept entirely just because it's difficult.
I love that concept of microdosing the seasons. That makes it incredibly practical. And this deep localization, this reliance on personal experience over dogma, also applies directly to how a practitioner interacts with plant spirits. The book references Elliot Cowan's profound work on plant spirit medicine, stressing that you should reach out and energetically connect with the spirit of a single plant without any preconceived notions, simply to see what energy it offers you personally.
Yes. The underlying belief is that the specific gift or energy that a plant spirit offers you in a given moment is exactly what your unique biology and spirit need, and it very well might not match what a textbook says it should do.
This was a huge aha moment for me. If you open any standard authoritative book on herbalism, it will tell you unequivocally that lavender is calming. It is prescribed for sleep, for anxiety, for tranquility. But what if you are a practitioner who interacts with the lavender plant, and for whatever quirk of your own neurochemistry or energetic makeup, its scent makes you feel intensely energized, focused, and awake?
A dogmatic system would tell you that you were wrong, that you were doing it incorrectly, or that you were broken. But the green path is incredibly validating here. It states unequivocally that your personal lived experience is the highest valid truth for your own practice. Acquiring firsthand, experiential knowledge always trumps a list of correspondences written by someone else centuries ago. The Green Witch never assumes they know a plant's energy just because they read a chapter on it. They seek out their own direct communion with it.
But I can still hear some of our urban listeners pushing back right now. They're thinking, this is all beautiful if you have a backyard, or if you live near a sprawling forest, or even just a decent suburban park. But I live in a high-rise in the absolute center of a concrete metropolis. My environment is purely, relentlessly urban. How do I physically attune to concrete? How do I forge a meaningful connection with nature when there is literally no nature visible around me?
And that frustration leads directly into one of the most vital, empowering sections of this entire philosophy, which completely reframes the concept of the modern garden and the omnipresence of natural forces. The core realization here is that wilderness is not the antithesis of civilization.
Say more about that, because we are absolutely taught that they are opposites. We talk about humanity conquering the wild.
We do, but it's a false dichotomy. The city and the deep forest are simply environmental extremes on a single, unbroken spectrum. They complement each other. The densely packed city is not automatically evil, sterile, or dead, and the untouched woods are not automatically pure, good, and safe. They're just vastly different expressions of the exact same underlying earth energy. An anthill is a densely populated, highly structured city built by nature. A human city is no different, just built on a larger scale by a different animal.
Wow, okay, that completely shifts the framework. The urban green witch is the bridge across that perceived gap. They recognize that a green witch garden doesn't require vast acreage, rolling hills, or perfect soil. It requires a willingness to work with what actually stubbornly grows in your immediate challenging area. The philosophy points out how ridiculous and frustrating it is for someone living in, say, a cold North American city to break their budget, their back, and their spirit trying to force exotic tropical plants like a cinnamon tree to grow in their tiny, drafty apartment just because some book said cinnamon is magical for prosperity.
It is the ultimate exercise in missing the point. If a plant does not grow natively or easily near you, you absolutely do not need it to forge a profound connection with nature. You are surrounded by power. You just have to work with what you have.
Because the elemental anchors, the massive, undeniable forces of nature, are present absolutely everywhere, even in the densest, most polluted city on Earth.
Exactly. You have the sun. The sun provides the life, the nourishment, the relentless warmth that sustains every single living thing, including the stressed out humans walking on the asphalt. Its energy penetrates the city smog. You have the moon and its undeniable gravitational pull on the water in the oceans and the water in our own bodies. And you have trees. I love how the author beautifully refers to trees as the pillars holding up the sky. They are the physical and energetic backbone of the practice.
And even a single battered tree planted in a 2x2 square of compacted dirt on a crowded city sidewalk is a massive living conduit of earth energy if you actually stop to acknowledge it.
It is. The philosophy gets delightfully, relentlessly practical here. It challenges the reader. Do you actually truly know your own neighborhood? Do you know what kind of soil is underneath the local playground? Is it heavy clay? Is it sandy? Is it chalky? When you turn on the faucet in your apartment, is the tap water coming out of your city pipes hard or soft? What specific, defiant, wild weeds are aggressively pushing their way through the cracks in the sidewalk outside your building's front door?
That is the magic. By simply slowing down and paying deliberate attention to these hyperlocal, seemingly mundane details, the chemical makeup of your local tap water, the resilience of a dandelion breaking through concrete, you tap into a massive, surging well of natural energy that 99% of people completely ignore as they rest by staring at their phones.
It perfectly emphasizes that modern green witchcraft is a hands-on, deeply practical, gritty reality. It is not escapism. You do not have to reverse human evolution, throw away your smartphone, and give up electricity to be connected to the earth. You simply have to integrate the massive, undeniable green energy that still exists and thrives in the modern world into your daily awareness. The modern practitioner serves as a vital bridge between the ancient past and the technological present. You look at those weeds thriving in the concrete, and you recognize the unstoppable, fierce, vital force of the earth pushing through the artificial constraints of human civilization. Recognizing that and aligning yourself with that resilience is the definition of magic.
So, as we wrap up this incredibly expansive deep dive into the Green Witch, I want to issue a very real, tangible call to action for you, the listener. Tomorrow, when you walk out your front door, I want you to take a notebook, and remember, it doesn't have to be fancy, a scrap of paper works, and just intentionally observe 3 natural things in your immediate neighborhood that you have passed 100 times but never truly looked at before. Maybe it's the specific shape of a weed growing by the bus stop, the rough texture of a stone incorporated into a modern building, or the exact way the morning sunlight hits a particular window at 8 a.m. Don't judge them, don't try to use them for a spell, just observe them, acknowledge that they exist.
If we synthesize why this philosophy and this book in particular is such a vital read for our current moment in history, it comes down to providing a cure for modern alienation. We collectively feel so stressed, so hopelessly disconnected, and so perpetually overwhelmed because we have forgotten our actual place in the ecosystem. We think we are separate. This practice matters profoundly because it reminds us step by step that we don't just live on the earth, we are the earth. For anyone seeking a sense of balance, this highly personalized, wonderfully flexible, dogma-free path offers a tangible way to plug back into the primary source of life, no matter where you live, what you do for a living, or what you believe.
It is a total necessary paradigm shift. And to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over from the expert insights we've explored today, we established that every positive, intentional gesture has the potential to become a magical act. a spell. Since you are entirely in control of your own green practice, and magic is defined simply as the conscious use of energy, ask yourself, what kind of magic are you unconsciously casting into your home, your workplace, and your community every single day through your mundane routines? Are your daily unexamined habits casting spells of stress, sharp division, and deep disconnection? Or are you consciously brewing harmony, empathy, and balance with every action you take?
It's a heavy question. It's a question that forces you to rethink the energetic weight of every single cup of tea you make, every door you open for a stranger, and every word you speak.
It really does. It makes you realize how much power you actually hold. If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to keep exploring massive, transformative ideas with us, make sure you subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss the deep dive. And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one.